Hi, we're here at the IO Magazine Global Forum 2019 in Paris, and I'm joined by Tim Leveridge, Vice President of Investor Relations at the Coca-Cola Company. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely glad to be here.
And you were just speaking on a panel about direct engagement. I know it's a topic that a lot of people are interested about at the moment. Can you tell us from your perspective, how is the situation evolving between direct engagement and broker-led engagement with the investment community?
Yeah, it's definitely evolving. What we're seeing is that more and more, especially the large, I would say the large funds, are really trying to take more of that on for themselves. It's affecting us in the context of thinking about how we get out and meet. It's affecting how we manage non-deal roadshows, even to the point where we've had our first kind of request and asked to be a part of a specific buy-side led only conference, which was the first time that I've seen that in my 15 plus years of being in investor relations. And I'm guessing that's going to be the start of more things to come in that area.
Yeah, some very interesting developments there. And is that having any impact on your team internally? Are you having to think about resources in different areas, new skills? How's that affecting your IR team?
Yeah, it has been having an effect. Now, I think to a certain extent, some of that's been compensated by improved technology. So the ease in which, and the ability for us to move faster, given the technology we can use, both in terms of getting information internally and what our internal resources have improved in that area. But that's also, it's more about having to allocate that more towards kind of one-on-one conversations, where probably previously it was around having some very strong relationships with a few, several of the sell side. It's really evolving to where there's a lot more kind of direct and importance of having consistent and direct relationships with a broader buy side universe. And so that, as a result, because it's it's just naturally more people to engage with on a regular basis, just means that it's taking up more time.
Okay, and one of the sort of reasons for some of these changes, some people put it down to MiFID II, the European regulation, and how that's affecting the interaction between investors and brokers and therefore companies. I mean, have you noticed any specific effects yourself from the regulation?
Yeah, I think what it's doing is, because it's breaking out and putting a lot of focus against how the fees are being done. There's just a lot more sensitivity, I think, than in the past, because historically you go in a buy side in terms of an entire package of engagement with one of the banks. They didn't have to think so much specifically about a given meeting, a given conference, et cetera. And what I'm hearing in terms of my conversations with buy side, especially the larger buy side firms, is they recognize that as they're having to really assess and think about a given price point and a given bill they're having to pay, it's just forcing them to rethink, am I really getting the value out of this? And I think that's just creating some rethinking of the whole process. We're still in a lot of price discovery, I think, in general around this. And so anytime there's any kind of that level of disruption, there's naturally going to be an element of everyone's going to try to figure out how to do it. And I think in my mind, we're still very much in that process.
Yeah, I think companies, investors, and the sell side are all trying to work out what they should do and how they should do it. So it's an interesting time at the moment. Maybe one final question. You talked a little about in your session about feedback. I wondered, in terms of this change, in terms of more direct contact, does that affect the amount of feedback you get or how you request feedback? How's it affecting that area?
Yeah, I talked about this on the stage, and really what I said, and I firmly believe this, which is so much of this just comes down to the attitude of the investor relations team. I've been able to build really good relationships. And when I say I'm speaking on behalf of the team. The team has built really good relationships, not just with the buy side or with the sell side, but across the whole kind of investor universe. And I think those relationships and having the strength of transparency on both sides allows us to get a lot of feedback. Sometimes it's feedback I don't necessarily want to have, but at the end of the day is, being open, being transparent with them about what's, pluses and minuses of our own company, then allows them to do the same with us. And I think having that and maintaining those ongoing conversations then just naturally allows and that feedback to come. The other thing that we do, and I can't say we do it every single time, but we try to do it as much as we can, is when we are, particularly if we're in somebody's offices, is to take the last 5 or 10 minutes of the conversation and ask them some simple questions of, what would it take for you to invest or engage more in the company? What do you risk about? What are you concerned about from a in our case, a Coca-Cola perspective? And that usually generates a lot of very good dialogue, and you kind of quickly can gather what are their kind of key topics, key investment decision points, and then is it something that we can manage? Is it something we can't? And then that allows us and informs us how we should be thinking about communicating around the business.
Well, I think that's a great practical tip to finish on. Tim, thank you so much for talking to us today.
Yeah, absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.